In this lesson, we will be working with filtering data from the list. So navigate into datpad.dev so you can follow along with me. So as you can see, I have this list of integers and there are some values inside of it, and I have a task in which I need to create another list from this sum numbers list where the numbers are less than 100. So basically I need to filter this sum numbers list and get only the results or values that are less than 100. And by using these numbers, I need to create another list. So let's go ahead and create another list. So list, it will hold the integers and the variable name will be filtered data. For now, I will be just assigning these sum numbers to this filtered data. Alright. So let's create an entry point. So void main, and then I will be printing this filtered data over here. So if I run this code now, then I will be getting all the data from these sum numbers in our filtered list. Alright. Now I need to filter the data so that I only get the numbers that are less than 100. So for that, I can use this .where in list. And then for converting this to Dart compatible list, I should be using .toList. So whenever you are creating a list from another list, make sure you always use this .toList. This toList will convert any list to Dart compatible list. Alright. So now let's get into this main part where. And inside of this parenthesis of where, we will have a function. So let's create an anonymous function inside of it. And this anonymous function or this callback function will have a callback value. Let's name it as element. Alright. And from inside of this callback value, we need to return a boolean, either true or false. So let's return true for now. So return true. Alright. Now if I run this code, then you can see that I have got the same numbers as previous. Right. There is nothing changed between the sum numbers and filtered data. But if I change this return to false, and if I run this, then you can see that I have got an empty list over here. So let's try to understand how this where works. So the function that you see inside of this where will run for exact number of time the length of this list. So currently there are 6 items in this list, right? So this function will run for 6 times, one for each data inside of this list. And the boolean value that is returned from this function will determine if this data will be saved in this new list. And currently we are returning only false from this function. All of this data are being ignored. But if we change this to true, then all of this data will be saved to this filtered data. Alright. So here, instead of using this return true or false for all the data, we can use condition and then return boolean conditionally. So now let's work on conditionally returning true or false based on these values. So the function that you see over here will run for 6 times, each time for an individual element, right? So when it runs for the first time, the value of this element is set to 10, and for the second time it's set to 20, for the third time it's set to 200, and so on. So each time this function runs, this element has the value of that particular data in which the list is looping or this list is running. Alright. So now if I print this element over here and run this code, then you can see that for each time the function is running, we are getting these values. So here we can use these elements to conditionally return either true or false. So if element is less than 100, then return true, else return false. Alright. So let's remove this. And now if I run this code, then you can see that I have got these numbers from this list that are less than 100. And why is it happening? Because we are checking the element's value, and if the element value is less than 100, then we are returning true. And while returning true, this data is being saved to this filtered data. And if the element is more than or equals to 100, then we are returning false, and this data is not being saved in our filter list. In other words, this return false is ignoring the data. So the data to be saved on this new list is determined by the return status or return boolean of this where function. Alright. And as we only need to return a boolean from inside of it, we can use only this condition for returning true or false. So if this condition matches, then this will provide a response of true, right? So why not return this statement from here? And let's remove all of this. So if the element is less than 100, then this becomes true and true is returned. And if this is more than 100, then false is returned, right? So we don't need this messier statement over here. We can replace this by simple return with a condition. And I can further minimize this code by using arrow function. So let's see what arrow function means in Dart, JavaScript or any other programming language. So for understanding arrow function, let me create a function over here that returns an string. So string return type and then some string, which is a variable for the function, and this returns a string, say ABC. Alright. Now let's print this some string function over here because this returns an string. We'll be getting ABC over in our debug console. And here you can see that we have this ABC. So if there is only one thing that is returned from a function, or there is only one line that is a return statement, then instead of using this return keyword and then the parenthesis, we can use arrow function for making our code cleaner and easier to understand. So for that we can remove this parenthesis, we can remove this return and directly use this arrow function over here. So this is equivalent of writing parenthesis and return. So anything that is at the right side of this function will be returned to this function. So now if I run this code, then you can see that I have got the same output, and this time I am not using return and then parenthesis, but I am using this flat arrow over here. Alright. So anything that is at the right side of this flat arrow is returned to this function. Alright. And we can use this same in our where as well. So instead of having this parenthesis, let's remove it. Let's remove this return keyword and simply use this flat arrow over here. And we don't need the semicolon. And our code has been minimized a lot. Right? So now if I run this code, then I'll be getting the same response. So this part of our code is producing true or false, and this is being returned to this function. Alright. So if it is less than 100, then it is returning true, and if not, it's returning false. So let me change this integer to string and keep some string inside of it. So apple, orange, kiwi, and so on. And as this string, as this list is a string, then the new list will also be of string type. And then instead of checking this, if the number is less than 100, we can also check for the string. So if element equals to apple, then only apple will be saved to this filtered data. So if I run this code, you can see that I've got this apple value in our filtered data. Alright. Now I can also apply multiple conditions over here. So if element equals to apple or element equals to kiwi, so here when the function is running, if the element matches apple or kiwi, then it will be saved to the filtered data. Alright. So if I run this code, then the filtered data will hold apple and kiwi. So we can use multiple conditions. All we need to do is either return true or false. So this is how you filter a data from a list in Dart. So that's it for this lesson, and in the next lesson we will be using the concept of filtering the data for displaying only the non-completed bucket list data. So I'll see you at the next lesson.